Bottom of the show doc.
Oh, yeah, he says you have to enable the new feature.
We have to enable...
And YouTube takes 30% now?
What?
That's bullshit!
That's bullshit. Nobody donate anything.
What the actual fuck?
Okay.
Are you serious? We need our own like PayPal donation shit or something.
Apparently.
Like,
all right.
Holy shit. YouTube,
let's introduce my half of the show.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Awesome Hardware live show. Kyle and I do it every Tuesday evening, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Twitch.tv/Awesome Hardware is where we stream live. Also to each of our individual YouTube channels. My channel, Paul's Hardware. We just streamed the first half of today's episode, which is episode 97, to Kyle's YouTube channel. So if you didn't catch that and you want to see how we got to where we are now, check the link in the description. It should be down there. We talked about many wonderful things. We're going to talk about more wonderful things on my half. Lots of Ryzen discussion, of course. We're going to get into that a little bit more. Other things as well. It's going to be wonderful. I promise. You guys will thoroughly enjoy it. If you don't, you get your money back.
No, you don't.
Since it's free, that means you get nothing. All right. Really quick, if you guys want to help support our channels, check out my store and Kyle's store. My store is at paulshardware.net. I have shirts, mugs, pint glasses, beanies, zip-up hoodies, all wonderful stuff, all really high quality. It has my logos on it. Check out the Zero Insertion Force shirt. Everyone who gets a new Ryzen CPU should get one of these. Goes perfectly. Goes perfectly along with that. There should be a bundle deal or something like that. Also, Kyle's store is bitwit.tech/store. He has a deal going on. If you happen to purchase both of his new designs, the Evolution shirt right here, as well as the Crystal RGB shirt, you get like a $5. You get like $5 back.
Yep.
You get $5. You get $5 back.
$5 off. Not bad.
Awesome. He also has some mugs. He also has some glassware and that stuff. It's all very good things. Very good things.
Indeed. 2 shirts for $35.
Yes.
Not
a great way to support us. A great way to get yourself some merchandise. If you happen to order during the live show and we catch it at the end, we will shout Johnson at you, which makes perfect sense.
Yes.
All right. Let's dive right back into it. Deep breath. Okay, back into the news. I keep forgetting which mouse I'm using. Back into the news. All right, so the news obviously is Ryzen. It's all about Ryzen, and we're gonna be talking about Ryzen.
Sure.
So Ryzen has launched. It's not been without its fair share of controversy. Let's just say this. I want to say this right at the beginning, right at the top of the discussion for Ryzen, because I don't think it's been clarified enough, and I think it's what's been causing a lot of the controversy is Ryzen processors. The Ryzen 7 1700, 1700X, and 1800X are very good processors. They have tons of cores, 8 cores. They have 16 threads. They chew through workstation tasks. Productivity tasks. They do a really good job. They are absolutely putting the screws to Intel when it comes to their higher end stuff. The 6900K in particular looks terrible at over $1,000 when you compare it to the $500 Ryzen 7 1800X. It looks even worse when you compare it to the $330 Ryzen 7 1700, which you can overclock to get within
basically the same as the 1800X.
Yeah, basically the same as the 1800X. Yeah. Maybe a hair or two shy of it. I mean, we're not sure what they're doing as far as binning or anything like that when it comes to like saying this die goes into an 1800X, this die goes into a 1700.
Right.
They could be doing some. They could be doing none at all. We're not really sure. Most of the CPUs, the 1700s through 1800Xs, will overclock to 3.8 to 4.1 gigahertz. 3.9 to 4 seems to be pretty standard.
Yeah.
4.1 seems to be starting to stretch it, and beyond that, you really need to have like exotic cooling or something crazy like that. Yeah. There's a massive spike when it comes to trying to push beyond 4 gigahertz, because in order to be stable, you need to really crank the voltage. As soon as you start to get the voltage past about 1.4 or above, the temperatures just start to go crazy high, and that's what you're left with. The controversy, if I may sum up, is because when you compare the Ryzen CPUs that have launched so far directly to directly to Intel counterparts, not just the mainstream Intel stuff, which has mainly been compared to the 7700K and 6700K, but also the higher end Intel stuff, Broadwell E, that's available right now, like a 6900, a 6850. It's not providing the amount of CPU performance that's necessary to keep up with the highest end GPUs that are out right now, primarily a GTX 1080. So when you test a GTX 1080 with a Ryzen processor and you compare it in some games, not all games, but in a decent number of games, to a Ryzen CPU and the same thing, you end up with the Intel processors being able to get a higher frame rate out of the same GPU than what the Ryzen processors are able to achieve.
Ryzen just bottlenecks a little bit quicker than
that's
Katie
not
Lake.
That's not to say that Ryzens are terrible at gaming or they suck for gaming.
Not
it's
by
just
any means.
You're not going to get 100% of what your GPU is capable of if you're using a high-end GPU and a Ryzen processor, and you're in a situation that is GPU constrained.
Yeah.
That's important. I'm sorry, CPU constrained. If you're GPU constrained, you're okay. That's why most of the Ryzen benchmarks that happened,
1080p.
most of the tests that they showed, were at 4K. Because at 4K, you don't see as much of a difference because the limitation is
you
more...
mean the ones by AMD themselves?
Yeah, because the limitation is more on the GPU than on the CPU. When you're in a CPU-constrained situation, which the simplest way to do it is just to benchmark at a lower resolution, such as 1080, but there's other situations as well where you can also be CPU-constrained. You're seeing less performance out of the GPU when you pair it with a Ryzen CPU. So, what that has led is to most people, I think, in the tech community who I've talked to and who give recommendations and who do reviews to say Ryzen is really good and as an all-around performer. And perhaps this hasn't been stated clearly enough. Ryzen is an absolutely awesome all-around performer. When you look at all of the things it can do, it's freaking amazing. If you talk to someone who says, all I want is a gaming PC, it becomes harder to say, yes, absolutely go for Ryzen. Because right now, you can say, go for a 7600K or a 7700K that cost either equivalent, about the same price with the 7700K, or even about $100 less with the 7600K, and your gaming performance is probably going to be the same, if not better.
Yep.
So what that has led to is a bunch of people who look at that and say, well, the reviewers are being too harsh on Ryzen. Look at all this other stuff. They're focusing too much on the gaming performance as opposed to other things. And I think what this comes down to, specifically with the gaming performance, is where most people, where the growth is in the PC market in general. Because the growth in the PC market right now, at least in the desktop space, in the build your own computer space, in the full-size computer space where most of these are going into, the growth is in gaming. Because overall desktop market is shrinking, gaming desktop market is growing. So there's more people who are interested in buying a gaming PC right now.
Yeah.
There's more people who are interested in be like, I really like video games. I love my console. I have an Xbox, and a PlayStation, and I play them all the time. And I've heard so much good things about PC gaming and higher resolutions and VR and other stuff that PC gaming can do that the consoles can't. And I really want to get into PC gaming. And it's a very hard sell directly right now. And again, right now. I'm not talking about months in the future, but right now, it's very hard to say if you want the most out of your graphics card, if you're spending, say, $1,000+, it's really hard to say, yes, you should absolutely go for a Ryzen processor. Because I'd love to say that. I would love to. But it's just harder to say it. Now, again, if you're doing anything else, if you're going to be gaming and streaming, which a lot of people want to do, if you're going to be doing any workstation tasks, if you're going to be
multi-threaded anything,
if you're going to be doing a virtual machine, if you're going to be setting up your system to run a bunch of virtual machines, if you're going to be doing video editing, if you're going to be doing
coding or anything,
video re-encoding, and you really love videos and you download them all the time and you like to download them in 4K, and then you like to transcode them all to 720 so you can put them on your phone in a low and not take up much space and take them on the go with you, like that kind of thing. If you're planning on doing lots of other things with your system, then yes, Ryzen makes absolutely 100% a lot of sense. Also, though, is the possibility, the potential for what Ryzen has in the future when it comes to updates, both from AMD at the microcode level, from the motherboard manufacturers, and updates and upgrades to their BIOSes, their firmware, their EFI.
And the game developers,
and also game developers, who AMD has already talked about and talked to and is working with, and Windows development, because there's also discussion about Windows limitations and the fact that Windows has been optimized for Intel for so long simply because they have held a much larger share of the market, and stuff like the Windows scheduler, the way Windows actually addresses the cores and threads in a Ryzen processor. There's discussion of Windows can't identify an actual physical Ryzen core from a simulated thread with SMT, and the fact that addressing those in a different way from the operating system level might be causing problems.
Right.
So all this is to say, it's a new platform. It's new in many different ways, and there's still lots of stuff going on when it comes to the software development. So there's still lots of question marks as far as what might happen in the future when it comes to game performance, right, and elsewhere. But again, I just want to reiterate, like, the strictly workstation performance of Ryzen is absolutely amazing, and anyone who's
for the price,
especially for the price, and anyone who's working on anything like that should really, really seriously consider it if you're looking at setting up a system. All right,
indeed.
Let's actually get into the articles, though. This is a TechSpot article that talks that they actually reviewed 16 different games playing at 1080p and 1440p. Again, lower resolutions, which puts more stress on the CPU and less stress on the GPU. They have all of their actual test beds listed here and their different setups. And here we can see in different situations, you're going to see different performance. So here, for example, is Tom Clancy's The Division and DirectX 12 playing at 1080p ultra quality. And you can see actually pretty much a parity here. You're basically getting the maximum amount of performance that the GPU is able to hit, whether you're playing with the 7700K, a 5960X, an 1800X, a 6700K. It's all right up there. You only start to see a drop-off when it comes to something like a dual-core 7350K or an older generation CPU architecture like what's being used in an FX 8370. Same thing happens when you play in 1440. But if you move down the line, DirectX 11, for example, not DirectX 12, you start to see a drop-off, and a pretty significant one. The Ryzen CPUs, as you can see here, 1800X, 1700X, dropping off by a good 30-ish, 20 to 30 frames per second.
Yeah. So
this is where you look at results and you say, it's hard to say, absolutely, if all you want to do is game, you should get a Ryzen processor. Hitman DirectX 11 at 1440, again, we can see a drop-off with the 1800X and 1700X. We even see a drop-off with the 5960X, and that's just goes to show how important instructions per clock is, and in particular how important also frequency is, both of those in kind of hand-in-hand for the performance that you get with the 7700K or 6700K or 6900K. Civilization 6 DirectX 12 mode also shows a drop for the Ryzen processors at 1440 again. And it's not like this is unplayable.
No,
it's not like you suddenly can't use your Ryzen system to game. It's just that you're not getting the amount of performance out of your GPU as you would be getting if you paired it with an Intel processor.
I think this also says a lot, the fact that like a lot of these games that we're looking at here are heavily multi-threaded, and yet the 1800X is getting beaten out by a 4-core, 8-thread Kaby Lake chip, for example, or even a Skylake chip that's last generation or whatever. I think that's just saying a lot about the architectures and how they've been, and how certain games have been optimized to favor one architecture over the other, because Kaby Lake, Skylake, any Intel architecture in the last 5-10 years has been consistent. I mean, they're iterating their architecture every year or two, Intel is. Whereas this is really the first big breakthrough that we've seen from AMD in almost a decade. And so I feel like game developers really haven't been And even like Microsoft with DirectX 12. I mean, DirectX 12 was supposed to bring huge optimizations for multi-core, multi-threaded workloads, and yet we're still seeing DirectX 12 games fall short of that with 1800x performance numbers. And I think that's just because no one was really expecting Ryzen to come around. I mean, we've been hearing about it for a year or two, but developers haven't really had much to base their own applications off of other than Intel chips for a long time now. And I think what we're going to start to see is a huge shift towards optimizing for both parties. I think everyone's going to see that AMD is now back in the game, and we have to start optimizing our programs and software for both Intel and AMD now, which is going to inevitably be better for us as consumers in the long run.
And also for more cores in general. And the cutoff for Intel for quite some time, just due to pricing and the way that they have established their mainstream processors and their higher-end processors, is that 4 cores has been the cutoff for quite some time. And even 4 cores is difficult to achieve for a lot of people based on the pricing from Intel. So anyway, I could go through all these, but again, guys, this is a TechSpot article, and all the links to the articles we're going to be showing are in the description if you guys want to check them out and view them a little bit further. It's great to see the review sites that have managed to tackle tons of different games. But again, I don't think it's up for debate that there is some limitation when it comes to Ryzen performance with games when you are CPU limited. That's been established, I think, pretty well. So the next question is, like, what can be done about it? Is this just how things are going to be? Like, this is a general statement, but a lot of people have said, like, oh, well, look at older GPUs that have launched. Like, look at AMD's 300 series, for example, or look like a
RX 480 or whatever.
Yeah, or look like at a Fury X or a Fury Nano. You can see pretty massive performance bumps, especially with specific games with a GPU when it comes to driver optimizations.
Sure.
My understanding from the CPU side is that that's not as possible,
right.
That we shouldn't expect massive increases in performance after launch simply because it's a different animal. You're talking about driver optimizations with the GPU and very specific implementations of how a GPU works with the game through the driver.
Right.
But that's not to say that there isn't anything that can be done.
Sure.
And AMD is already saying that the Ryzen gaming performance will get better. So there's good old Lisa. She said,
I think one of us took that picture, actually.
I definitely took a picture.
It's Gordon Malone.
Oh, that's a Gordon picture.
Nice, Gordon.
Nice. Yeah, I took a picture right at that same time, though,
Yes.
as she was holding it and smiling.
Kind of mobbed her.
Yeah. So AMD is already saying they have over 300 developers now working with Zen, and several of the developers for Ashes of the Singularity and Total War Warhammer are actively optimizing right now, both of which are games that are very frequently benchmarked and also typically tend to be more CPU heavy workloads. Robert Halleck from AMD said that games will be patched to improve performance on the Ryzen architecture. Oxide Games, Bethesda, and Sega are already working with AMD on near-term optimizations that will improve Ryzen's gaming performance. And then many of these game devs, Oxide, Sega, and Bethesda, have already said that there's significant performance improvement that can be gained. So, I mean, that's pretty positive from my perspective. If the developers themselves are saying, yes, we see headroom here, we see things that we can do to make things better. Especially now that they have the chips in their hands and they're able to work with them. It's the same thing that I'm sure has been going on with Intel chips for quite some time. It's just the hardware that they're working with. And if they see that there's more resources available and that they can modify the way the game engines work to take advantage of that, then they could get more performance out of it.
Yeah.
Another thing that was pointed out, and this is sort of a random from this article, but I definitely wanted to bring it up as a cool thing, is that consumer Ryzen chips are going to support ECC memory for servers and NAS boxes. Error-correcting memory, if you're not familiar with that. Incredibly helpful and important for ZFS file systems, so for free NAS configurations and that kind of thing. I imagine especially when we start to see Ryzen 3 chips, could be a really cool implementation for a much cheaper and more viable alternative to like a Xeon chip that you have to invest in to get ECC support. And that's just kind of one of those cool things. And I think that is because as AMD has been developing Ryzen, they're really trying to create a core that they can stack, that they can build upon, and that they can use not just all the way down to like the low end, low power, quad core or whatever R3 chips, but also all the way up to their Naples server chips that they're building that are going to have 32 cores and 64 threads and live in 2 socket systems that have crazy 128 thread processing capabilities, and that's pretty cool too. Also, just mentioned in the article, and we've already, I know I mentioned this in my overclocking video, that Ryzen benefits from the high performance Windows power setting, which enables it to do much faster switching between power states, and it also turns off core parking, and also if you disable the high precision event timer. Although that's confusing to me. I hope they're able to fix that so it can work with HPET enabled, because that is what their software uses to actually monitor the chip and what's going on in temperatures and stuff. All right, I'm going to try to really quickly go through a couple more advanced topics. And again, because they're more advanced and because I'm trying to go through them quickly, I'm not going to delve into them too deeply, but this is definitely some additional reading for people who are interested in Ryzen and interested in the potential for Ryzen, and just ongoing analysis as the chips have come out. And this article in particular is from Tech Power Up, where they're analyzing the Ryzen cache, which is the extremely fast, basically embedded Ryzen memory. There's L1, L2, and L3. It has 20 megabytes of it in total, but depending on the software that's being used and how much of the cache it's used, they've actually, according to this article, found some situations where the Ryzen cache definitely is not optimal. The data here in specific comes from hardware.fr. It says that they've explored Ryzen's cache and memory subsystem deficiencies through the use of IDA64. There seems to be some problem with Ryzen's L3 cache and memory subsystem implementation. When they pair the same memory configuration at the same 3 GHz clock speeds, for instance, Ryzen's memory tests show that memory latency results, they're up to 30 nanoseconds higher, 90 nanoseconds to be specific, than the average latency found on Intel's i7-6900K or even the FX 8350, which are both around 60 nanoseconds.
Nanoseconds? That's a metric you don't see too often.
Well,
and, I guess if you're talking about memory, then that is quite a bit.
When you talk about system cache, I mean, which is the fastest storage in any system, is going to be your CPU's cache.
Well, yeah.
The L1 cache being the fastest, and then L2 and L3 being slower. So Intel's L1 cache, according to this article, is still leagues ahead from AMD's implementation. AMD's L2 is overall faster than Intel's, although it does incur a roughly 2 nanosecond latency penalty. And AMD's L3 memory is very much behind Intel's in all metrics, but L3 cache copies, with latency behind being almost 3 times greater than on Intel's 6900K. So on the 1800X, they say everything is fine with the L1 and L2 caches, 32 kilobytes and 512 kilobytes respectively. However, when moving towards the 1800X's 16 megabyte L3 cache, the behavior is completely different. Up to 4 megabytes of cache utilization, we see an expected increase in latency. However, latency goes through the roof way before the chip's 16 megabytes of L3 cache is completely filled. This clearly derives from AMD's Ryzen modularity, with each CCX complex made up of 4 cores and 8 megabytes of L3 cache, besides all the other duplicated logic being able to access only 8 megabytes of L3 cache at any point in time. Again, there's much more information in this article. I encourage you guys to read it if you want to read a little bit more, but a little bit more deep info on how the CPUs are actually working, how they're shuttling information back and forth, how the amount of cache that any particular software uses is pretty important, especially when it hits that L3 cache due to the slowdowns that are mentioned. Anyway, another article that I wanted to bring up, this one's from Legit Reviews. Actually, this was Nathan wrote this article. They were testing memory kits, and it's already been shown by several people, and this article has sort of confirmed it a little bit further, that Ryzen really likes faster memory. And if you can get your DDR4 speed up, it can lead to some memory to some
Clock speed improvements.
well, just some overall system performance improvements. I was running my tests when I was benchmarking Ryzen at 2933, which definitely seems to be a nice bump up for if you're running 2133 or 2400. Nathan went and tested a bunch of different kits with a bunch of different speeds. He was using the MSI X370 Titanium, which, Kyle, I believe is the same motherboard that you tested with, right?
Yes.
And he goes into a little bit more depth about the different configurations that are available right now, the timing settings that are available right now. This is the actual Ryzen memory support from AMD, whether you're using dual channel, dual rank with 4 DIMMs or 2 DIMMs or single rank. With single rank, you can get higher speeds. Dual channel, single rank, 2 DIMM configuration is what they've rated for the highest right now, 2667. However, people have been able to achieve memory speeds that are higher than that, of course, depending on the memory kits that they're using and everything like that. What I had heard from Asus is that they're using like G-Skill, like 4,000 plus rated memory kits to actually hit the speeds, hit higher speeds. But that's not necessarily required, and we're going to do the cheap thing and skip to the conclusion here, because Nathan found that the cache and memory benchmark, at least with IDA64, when you compared it to megabytes per second per dollar, because 3200 speed memory and 2133 speed memory with DDR4 isn't that huge of a price difference. The premium that you pay is more with the higher speed memory, like upwards of 3800, 4000. So he found that 3200 megahertz speed right here is where you kind of get the best bang for your buck. That's pretty much it.
Why does it say lower is better?
Lower is...
Oh.
What?
What's this lower is better than?
Megabytes per second per dollar. So, yeah. For every dollar that you spend. I don't know why it says lower is better. That's weird.
Doesn't that mean...
That would be higher, should be better.
Yeah, a typo then.
But given that this chart also indicates that he's overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz, which I'm pretty sure is not true, let's assume that there might be a typo or two in there that we're seeing.
True.
What can I go back? Okay.
So, memory speed actually does affect
so memory speed,
your overall
memory speed does seem to have some effects, and it's something that people should consider. And if you want to run higher memory speed, then consider yourself a 3200 speed kit.
Is the Ripjaws 5, is it rated for, is it, whatchamacallit, validated for Ryzen?
No.
Okay.
I mean, the number of validated kits for Ryzen motherboards, from my understanding right now, is very minimal.
It's LPX, basically.
Yeah. Corsairs.
That's what I thought. That's what I was asking. I was like, oh, I can stick some Ryzen
Corsairs is
Ripjaws 5 in there.
But yeah, I mean, the motherboard manufacturers have to test the kits. They have to test lots of kits. They have to make sure that all the kits will work. They have to have a motherboard BIOS that's updated, and a lot of the motherboard manufacturers right now are like on the verge of releasing some new updated BIOSes in the week or so since launch happened.
Yeah.
So there's not that many validated kits that are out there. That's not to say they won't work. It's just to say validated means that the motherboard manufacturer has tested them to the point where they're guaranteeing you that it will work. Yeah. Okay. And now let's get as far into it as I'm going to get right now. And again, I'm not going to get that far into this, but this article is again linked in the description. This is from the Anand Tech forums. And this is, I mean, from my browsing around today, this is probably the most advanced, in-depth discussion of Ryzen. It's the Ryzen strictly technical discussion on the Anand Tech forums. There's tons of really useful information here if you want to learn more about Ryzen and how it works under the hood. Like CCX stands for Compute Complex. That's useful, which is 4 Zen cores and a shared 8 meg L3 cache. And that is the building block that Ryzen is built upon. The P states are performance states. Zeppelin is a code name for the die that's used in Summit Ridge. Digital low dropout voltage regulator. Extended frequency range. Maximum all-core frequency. Anyway. They talk about the on-die system management unit, the SMUs, the XFR, the base clock, internal voltage regulation, the frequency relations of the CCX, the data fabric. Fabric. Data fabric. Overclocking and some additional stuff as well. also some power consumption numbers. So people are really kind of digging into Ryzen. It's been exciting, and there's still a long way to go, I think is what it comes down to. I'm very interested in a Windows patch. I'd love to see a Windows patch specifically with some accommodations for Ryzen, because that is one of the accusations that's been made that I think is pretty legitimate, is that Windows hasn't really been set up for anything beyond an AMD, excavator core for quite some time.
Yeah. And you can't
Ryzen
blame
operates
them,
differently.
just because they have really had nothing to base it off of. But
yeah. So
now they do.
Anyway, there you go.
That's going to split the market. Ryzen, at the very least, is going to split the market to the point where other big names in the tech company like Microsoft are going to have to start looking more closely at how they optimize their software.
Mm-hmm.
Because whether or not Ryzen is good for gaming, specifically, at least the R7 series, people are still going to be buying that shit up left and right. It's still going to shake up, or as AMD likes to say, disrupt the market share. Intel is probably going to lose more market share this year than they ever have in the last 5 to 7 years, I would say.
Oh, well, yeah, they should.
And beyond, yeah.
And we will see how they respond. But yeah, I mean overall, so I think when it comes to like the criticisms that have been coming down, and Kyle talked about this a bit at the end of his half of the show. I think where we saw it the most harshly was with Gamers Nexus, because Gamers Nexus, I think, did their due diligence in testing Ryzen. I think they found a shortcoming, and I think they harped on that shortcoming. Yeah. Which as a reviewer is what you're supposed to do. Yeah, like now if it seemed to a lot of people like it was too much criticism on this one very specific niche area of Ryzen's performance, I can understand that, and I can see how people got frustrated with that. I understand the argument that the Ryzen CPUs that have launched are all Ryzen 7 CPUs. They're $330, $400, and $500. They are not priced in the same range as the CPUs that are typically pitched as, here's your gaming CPU. They're made to do many other things. Yeah. But that's not going to stop people from trying to game with them. That's not going to stop people who from being excited. People who were excited about Zen and Ryzen from the get-go to being like, it's available now. I want to get it and I want to build a gaming PC with it. And it's not going to stop people from basically, doing everything that they can to get the performance that they can out of it. Now, we talked a little bit about some of the things, some of the changes, some of the updates that might happen soon for that. And I think Kyle and I will both agree that we honestly hope that these improvements do bring that gaming performance back in line with what you can get right now with a high-end Broadwell E or a Kaby Lake processor. But I think probably the biggest problem that's caused a lot of this controversy is that the mainstream Ryzen SKUs have not launched yet. We don't have Ryzen 5 yet. We don't have Ryzen 3 yet. And if there's a $160 Ryzen 3 that's a quad core without hyper-threading or something like that can just tear through quad core games and kick the shit out of it 7600K. Yeah. People will probably be like, buy this for game with this. There's no other sensible thing to do other than do this with this right now. It's funny
because we haven't seen the same sort of criticism that we've been seeing with Ryzen on the Intel side of things. Like when Intel launched the 6800K, 6850K, and 6900K, which were all kind of more on the enthusiast side, more cores, more threads, but not necessarily higher IPC than something like Kaby Lake. However, at that point, Intel was already in the game. Kaby Lake was already pretty much around and established as this is the go-to for hardcore gamers, whereas AMD has really had nothing to show for themselves. They've really had no sort of portfolio when it comes to gaming CPUs, other than this one chance to prove themselves with Ryzen. And so I just feel like there was sort of a double standard there, where if it had been Intel with a big launch with the 6900K, people would have slammed it for gaming. Like why the fuck? What's the point of a 6900K for $1,000? Why would you even buy the CPU? It sucks for gaming. But that's also not how it was reviewed. It was reviewed more so from a production standpoint. From like, well, how fast can you render a video? Or how does it perform in Blender? That sort of thing. And so I feel like there's sort of a double standard here where a lot of people are testing Ryzen strictly for gaming. And I'm sort of guilty of this. And on the other hand, you have to also realize that as tech YouTubers and what we do, we read the comments, we track the data, we see the numbers on what types of videos get hits and which ones don't. Our demographics say that most of our audience cares about gaming above all else. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you most of my and Paul's and Linus's and Jay's audience cares more about gaming purely than they do video editing or encoding, things like that. So you also have to bear in mind that that's how, when you say like, well, I can't believe like Ryzen was so unfairly compared in like a strictly gaming environment, you also have to take a moment and examine where the reviewers are coming from, and they're trying to cater to their audience that they know is like the core demographic. Our core target audience is gamers, and so we want to create content that's relevant to the people who watch our videos. And if that means testing it in terms of gaming performance and seeing which of these two CPUs are really the better value if you're on a budget, then so be it, you know. But that's just something that I think people forget about, is like what the audience is that we're catering to, and you know, I don't know.
Yes, I agree. I also want to point out that if you have looked at the recent reviews and everything when it comes to Ryzen, and you've thought to yourself, like, well, they're testing at 1080. I don't care about 1080. I care about 4K. The performance of 4K is equivalent. I just want to point out that as GPUs get faster, yes. So if you look at something like a 1080 Ti or like an SLI configuration, or as the games get easier to process, if you take something like running a game in 4K at Ultra versus running it at high settings or something like that, you can remove the load from the GPU, or the GPU can get better so that the load that's on the GPU is easier for the GPU to handle.
Yeah.
In which situation, the bottleneck goes back to the CPU. There's no...
That argument goes out the window. So
there's no game that has exactly equivalent level of usage between CPU and GPU. Mm-hmm. You're always going to be limited in one way or another. And, you know, you can try to get that equivalent as much as you can or whatever. Usually what you try to do is just you have a really fast CPU so that your GPU is never bottlenecked. That's typically what most people will try to do if they can afford it. But... yeah, if your argument is like, oh, I don't care about the 1080 performance of Ryzen, it's not about that. It's about I don't care. You're basically saying I don't care about the CPU limited performance of Ryzen. When the CPU is what's holding things back. This is what the reviewers have been talking about. When the CPU is what's holding things back, and when you're testing Ryzen, it's holding the GPU back more so than what Intel CPUs are doing. So yeah, just to put it that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's probably about all we have to say about the Ryzen thing right now. Wait, we have a little bit more because we're going to do a sword fight in a bit. But let's move on to other news.
Alrighty.
And again, I'll try to burn through this really quickly. Non-Ryzen news. We have another segment here, which is just news that's not about Ryzen.
Who cares?
Because everything has been about Ryzen so far. GTX 1080 Ti. Kyle talked about how the unboxing embargo was lifted. Kyle did an unboxing video this morning.
I did?
That was yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever the hell that was.
Who cares?
I don't care. It was sloppy seconds. Mine was already up there. But we do have some GTX 1080 Ti graphics cards from several different vendors that have teased some pictures. So here is EVGA's GeForce GTX 1080 Ti for the Win 3.
Pretty sexy.
3-fan configuration. A design here. So Kyle and I actually got to take a quick look at this.
Yeah, as we were watching
the NVIDIA event,
NVIDIA Editors Day, while Jensen was finishing up his stream, the EVGA CEO, who we had met with quite recently to cover the ICX, Andrew, to cover the ICX cards in their office in Brea, was sitting like 2-3 seats over from us, and he just stands up and sees us, and he just like takes out his cell phone, his smartphone, and like shows us like, what do you think of this? And we're like looking at him like, what is that? He's like, it's the GTX
It's
1080
the 1080 Ti for the Win 3.
Mother effers. And he dropped it like that. He's like, mother.
So
damn, Andrew.
not quite as squared
Hardcore.
off. We described it as looking a little bit more organic with these little pockets that are in here. And also EVGA's first triple fan cooling solution.
Yeah.
So
I like how it's like sort of an exoskeleton sort of design. It looks really different than the honeycomb sort of mesh that we saw with the rest of the Pascal stack.
Yeah. Looks pretty cool though.
Yeah.
So that's from EVGA.
That's nice.
Asus has a design that looks basically exactly like their existing Strix design. But there it is.
But it looks nice. I'm not
and it's not to talk shit on their Strix design. I have one of those in the system right here behind me, and it's a very good design. And
Indeed.
it's got RGB LEDs, but also they're subtle enough that they don't stand out if you want to turn them off or something like that.
Yeah.
Zotac has PGF Prime Gamer Force.
That's a new one.
Which is
that's new.
It's a stupid acronym.
Prime Gamer Force is pretty silly.
I'm sorry.
It's pretty
Prime
dumb.
Gamer. All right, whatever.
Doesn't
Zotac
even-
PGF, also a triple fan design. 2 8-pin connectors. They're also going to be doing a Founders Edition apparently. This looks like a
Looks like a Star Citizen
concept 3D render, whatever.
Star Citizen.
I'd be curious
thing.
how these lights work out and if they light up and if they're RGB.
They look like Chevy logos.
Chevy logos. They kind of do look like there's a Chevy.
The Chevy card.
Right? There's a Chevy on the
Yes,
left
thank
and a
you,
Chevy
chat.
on the right.
Chevy.
Thank you, chat.
Lawsuits imminent.
MSI, much like NVIDIA with their Founders Edition, just refusing to change. They're like, no, this is the perfect
No,
card
fuck you.
design, and we're not changing anything.
Fuck you, brah.
Here is our, what is it, Twin Frozer
Twin Frozer 6?
8 or 6 or
10,
whatever the hell Twin Frozer version
35.
that they're on.
It's like Final Fantasy.
I don't mind this design, but it's got to be red and black. Like, if you're not red and black, then
you're shit out of luck.
Yeah. EVGA again. All right, we already looked at that one. Inno 3D, which is not quite as well known in the US.
Hit the little fans on the cards. Like,
This
let's
is
just
extra
make it.
fan.
Let's just make it noisier.
We don't have
That's
enough.
what I see.
These
Every time I
3
see a little
fans
fan,
are not enough. We need
how
this
can we
extra
make
fan.
this card a lot louder? Let's put a little tiny fan and
It
ramp
also-
up to like 5,000 RPM.
It also looks like it adds another centimeter or two of like Z height
Oh, yeah.
or whatever to this.
Like, sorry if you wanted to
kinda
put this in a
strange.
small form factor build. We'll just make it really loud and inconvenient for you.
Also, they're clearly ripping off the Fractal logo.
Rip headphone users.
Yep.
Yeah, and Silverstone for that matter.
Colorful with, I don't care what. This is Colorful has a Founders
This is
Edition.
not article
All right, if it's a
worthy.
Founders Edition, it doesn't matter.
No.
All right. Anyway, guys, so there's some of the 1080 Ti special editions that you can expect coming soon.
Yarg.
Given that there was a lot of speculation that the 1080 Ti has been ready for a while and NVIDIA has just been sitting on it and waiting for it, I would expect there to be third-party editions of the 1080 Ti available pretty quick.
Yeah.
After it launches, whenever the hell that happens to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
YouTube TV.
Here we go. No, we're going to talk about this one first.
Oh, okay.
Most of my next articles are
yeah,
from ARS Technica.
Pokers.
So, poker with the GTX 1080. If you want to go into a casino and take your GTX 1080, maybe they won't let you in anytime soon. Carnegie Mellon computer scientists' algorithm. So, an algorithm made by scientists at Carnegie Mellon. It's called Liberatus. Beat a set of professional poker players in a 120,000 hand tournament at the end of January.
How many players? 200 something?
A set of professional poker players, but it was 120,000 hands.
Oh, wow.
That they played. This article actually discusses 2 separate things: the Carnegie Mellon's Liberatus algorithm, as well as another algorithm made by a separate group called DeepStack, which sounds like a pretty cool algorithm if you're going to make a name for an algorithm that plays poker.
Yep.
Anyway, the difference here between something like this and something like what you've seen Deep Blue and its amazing chess playing, for example, is that poker is an imperfect information game as opposed to a perfect information game like chess or checkers. Chess or checkers, you have a board, you see all the pieces, you know where all the pieces are, you know all of the information.
There's no randomized
There's no
factors.
unknown information.
Right.
So a computer program can look at that and know exactly what's going on, and therefore predict, five moves ahead or 10 moves ahead or whatever it might do.
Every single scenario, sure.
An imperfect information game such as poker
Hidden deck.
and a vast array of other games besides poker include information that is known, the cards that are face up, as well as a bunch of information that is unknown, the cards that are in people's hands and the cards that might be in the deck that is still face down.
It'd be harder for a computer to beat you at Go Fish than it would at a game like chess.
Possibly. I don't want to say that yes for sure, but yeah, based on this, that would make sense.
You heard it here first.
Because you don't know what cards your opponent has when you're playing Go Fish.
Fair enough.
So the computer, the algorithms in this case, choose a strategy and calculate how likely they are to regret using that strategy as the game progresses. The strategy that the computer uses changes hand to hand, so that the human players that are playing against it can't start to recognize patterns that they might be able to exploit.
Sure.
The human players also, at least in this situation, discussed strategic weaknesses that they had seen in the algorithm in between hands. So the team would actually take that information and
your computer
feed it into the algorithm, and they would retrain it. And since they had access to a petaflop of computational hardware as they were doing this, they used it to patch weaknesses. So the human players who were playing against the computer algorithm would see that the weaknesses that they had saw the day before, and then told
fixed.
the people who were programming the algorithm, suddenly those weaknesses aren't there anymore. Obviously, your strategy should have been not to tell the computer what the weaknesses were, so it could fix them.
Yep.
But that's just my poker playing strategy. I don't know.
That makes sense.
Anyway, though, Liberatus came out $1.75 million ahead, which makes it almost as profitable as all those computer algorithms that do trades in the stock market. Part of the reason it was able to be so effective is that it only considers a limited number of options in any situation that it's trying to assess and determine what it should do. It will fold, it will call, it will go all in, or it will make only 2 or 3 different bets. So that limited the number of future states that had to be considered by about 140 orders of magnitude as a result of computation, of which action only took about 5 seconds to run on a single GTX 1080.
What does that mean?
It simplified the number of computations that needed to be run so that the GPU compute performance of a 1080 was able to handle it in about 5 seconds.
Just like its decision to...
Yeah.
Just to decide.
So with a fairly simple piece, a relatively simple piece of readily available consumer hardware, a GTX 1080, which costs $500 thanks to the recent price drop, you could compute. You could take this algorithm, feed it into that, and get a result in about 5 seconds.
So the GTX 1080 Ti then would be fast enough
35% faster
to be the dealer.
3.5 seconds.
Or
I would
yeah,
assume.
it'd be 3.5 seconds. That's true.
Also, my assumption would be that if you walk up to like a poker table in Vegas now and you're carrying a GTX 1080,
they'd be like,
sorry,
no,
sir, you
don't
can't.
sit down.
No.
And never sit down at a table where a GTX 1080 is sitting.
That's also very good
already
advice. If you sit at a poker table,
you will lose.
And there's just a gaming PC there with a 1080 in it.
Don't.
I know. Liberatus.
I'm gonna sit the R7 470 table.
Liberatus or DeepStack or whatever software you're using. Totally gonna take advantage
GTX
of it.
960 sitting over at that table. Yep. I say we snipe that one.
Indeed. All right, we talked a little bit briefly recently about YouTube TV. It's a new service that's being offered by YouTube. This article asks how it stacks up against DirecTV Now, PlayStation Vue, and Sling TV. So YouTube TV is a $35 per month service. There's only one tier, so it's basically $35 per month.
That'll change.
It's providing dozens of broadcast and cable channels, including numerous sports networks, which is probably one of the biggest considerations when it comes to cable cutting for people who want to cut off their cable subscription.
Sure.
Is the access to sports, because if you're a sports person, you gotta watch your sports. You cannot be without it.
Sports is love.
So it includes Dozens of those broadcast cable channels, including the sports networks, as well as a cloud-based DVR service, and you can have up to 3 simultaneous streams streaming to you. Here's a little chart that compares some of it. It's going to launch sometime later this year, by the way. It's not available right now. The biggest challengers, of course, are DirecTV Now, PlayStation Vue, and Sling TV. YouTube is one of the only services amongst this group to include all the biggest broadcast channels. ABS, CBS, Fox, NBC, and the CW. As you can see, prices are all within about the $35 to $40 range, except Sling TV, which is $20. Although you don't get quite as many channels, only 30 plus with Sling TV as compared to 60 plus with DirecTV Now.
I don't know if sports fans though are gonna want to go to YouTube as a platform.
I don't know.
To watch their sports.
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
If it can provide them a better experience than they get with cable, then maybe.
But it depends on what their idea of a good experience
you also have to
is.
You have to also have to
what
consider.
If they want to utilize their 60-inch, HDR 4K TV.
What's wrong with that? Then definitely you would want YouTube.
Well, then they would want an HTPC.
Then you would want YouTube, which is one of the only services that can provide that actual type of signal to you versus the over-the-air broadcast, which
not
is
if
garbage.
they only have a cable box attached to their TV and their computer is completely separate in a room attached to a 20-inch monitor.
This is being pitched towards a group of people that are a little bit more savvy than that.
And what I'm saying is how many sports jocks are super into, have a connected PC to their
You
TV.
might find that if the actual end result is that they can watch uncompressed, even 1080 footage of sporting events, I think you'll find a pretty significant number of people who are interested in that.
All the sports people in my life, I will have to spend at least a week or two explaining to them what exactly that means before they realize.
Well, you need to talk to them because, all right, so
that's exactly my point.
My sports influence is my old roommate Chad, a good friend of mine who I've known since high school, and one of the biggest complaints he had when we finally got 1080, we had the 1080. This is 7 or 8 years ago. We finally had a 1080 TV, and we finally had 1080 HD service from the whatever Time Warner or whoever we had at that point. And he'd pull up 1080 sports broadcasts. They'd be compressed as shit. It'd be awful. And not awful. All right, still slightly better than your 480 broadcast.
Not
but
ideal, though.
The compression on a live sports broadcast can be really, really bad. So if you can offer a situation. And I'm obviously making some assumptions here, but if you can offer a situation where you can circumvent that and give them actual crisp, clean 1080s feeds, to say nothing of the availability of higher end stuff like 4K and HDR, I think you'll find quite a few people who are willing to take that technological leap to doing something like this, as opposed to
those type of people just need to be shown the way. I think without a tech savvy person in their life, they're not going to really even know what they're missing out on.
That's why we need to make videos that talk about it.
We need to go Jehovah's Witness on
explain exactly.
We need to go door to door in bicycle helmets and share the good word of YouTube.
And it's a big part of this article. What about sports ball? YouTube has the upper hand. For $35 a month, you get 12 sports channels, including ESPN, Fox Sports, Comcast Sports Net, and NBC Sports Network. That's the most offered by any base subscription, and you can watch most of those games on your desktop, on TV, or mobile device. Only exception we know of now is NFL content on mobile devices. Verizon already has a deal with NFL to stream games on mobile, so you can only watch NFL content on a desktop or on a TV using YouTube TV. So that's due to an exclusive deal that Verizon already has. But anyway. Certainly some compelling information about YouTube TV there, if you weren't already interested. All right. This is a topic that deserves either about 1 minute of discussion or about a half an hour. So I'm going to do the 1 minute version. WikiLeaks this morning, published documents from what it says is a trove of CIA hacking tools. There is the technical information here. There's also a huge quagmire of politics to dive into here. We're basically going to avoid the politics and talk about the technical aspects of this, which are significant. According to WikiLeaks, this is the first of a multi-part series of documents and files from the Central Intelligence Agency. This first part what they're calling Year Zero compromises 8,761 documents and files from an isolated high-security network situated inside the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence in Langley, Virginia. Among the hacking tools listed are those for iOS, a collection of Android 0 days, and hacking techniques from various sources, including... what happened? Including the UK's GCHQ and National Security Agency, or the NSA. These tools, WikiLeaks claimed, permit the CIA to bypass the encryption of WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, Weibo, Confide, Cloakman by hacking the smartphones that they run on and collecting audio and message traffic before encryption is applied. So just to be absolutely clear here, they have not broken the encryption. The encryption still works. They have cracked into the actual operating system that you're using, whether it's iOS on an iPhone or Android on an Android phone, to basically be like, as you're typing in the information, they're grabbing it before it even goes through the encryption that the apps are doing.
They're preempting your ass.
So encryption is not broken, but if you get the shit before the encryption happens, then
you're still getting screwed.
Yeah, then the information can still be submitted. So again,
smart.
Such a huge amount of political discussion that's sort of under the surface right here. But again, we're not going to discuss that. Just let it be known that the CIA, shady motherfuckers. Just shady motherfuckers.
Yeah.
And apparently your Apple phone or your Android phone could be completely cracked and just listen to you all the time and all that stuff. It's crazy. It's nonsense.
Jesus.
All right,
let's destroy my...
Moving on to some better news. Robots are going to be made with human flesh.
That sounds exciting.
These humanoid robots.
Tell us more.
What a great picture they chose for this, too.
I know.
I think
that's a good iStock
the
footage
Terminator,
right there.
the Terminator, the more recent Terminator.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, researchers in this article have proposed a humanoid bioreactor system with structures, dimensions, and mechanics similar to those of the human body. As the robot interacted with its environment, tissues growing on its body would receive the same typical strains and twists that they would if they grew on an actual human. The result would be healthy tissue grown for the exact body area it was designed to replace.
So does that mean, like, robots are still going to have BO?
Yeah, pretty much.
That fucking sucks.
That's
like the one thing I was hoping for. Like,
well,
at least robots won't smell bad. They'll always smell on point. But no, if they have the same human shitty rotting flesh that we do, they're still gonna need to like fucking double down on like the latest dry idea or whatever the fuck. Wait, what's the one? What's the one Terry Crews uses? Old Spice.
Old Spice.
Double down on Old Spice so that we don't smell them. Because, I mean, if I see, like, a fatty...
Well, because if you're looking at this video, like, this is obviously a robot, right? But if you grew just a bit of skin over that...
And ball sacks...
And if it had a ball sack...
And a bunch of pubes, that would stink.
You'd have to have the pubes on there.
What is that? It looks like a fish.
These are what will eventually replace us as humans.
Good lord. It looks like a mermaid.
Look at that.
Oh, my God.
Walking
Oh, my
test.
God. Have you seen Ex Machina? Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
That's a tricky movie.
Some hip joint motion. Anyway, we're all going to be replaced by robots.
And they're going to smell bad. They're going to smell just like us.
All right, let's do sword fight. We have like 2 seconds to argue either side. So here is the first question.
Let's just say the word. Like that's our argument. I'll
Ryzen.
say success, and you can say failure, and then we'll go.
All right, it's perfect.
Right?
Hold on, I gotta paste this into the YouTube chat.
Screw the children.
All right, here's the straw poll. Ryzen, obviously we need to discuss this and figure it out. It's been a huge issue amongst the tech community recently. But Ryzen, is it a success or is it a failure?
I'll let Paul play devil's advocate because I think that what he's really feeling and what I'm really feeling and what a lot of people are really feeling is that Ryzen is a success through and through. Because at the end of the day, yeah, it might not be able to compete with like a Core i5 7600K, for example, in terms of IPC or raw gaming performance. But at the end of the day, you can't deny the fact that Ryzen has given Intel a run for its money, at least in the high-end production workspace, for the first time in ever, and that makes it a competitive option that is going to split the market share. And that's at the end of the day, what we all kind of wanted was for Intel to have some sort of competition at the high end to begin with, and now they finally have that. So whether or not the R5 or the R3 is going to kick Kaby Lake out of the water or whatever it is, Ryzen has facilitated the path for AMD to be back in the game. And I think in the grand scheme of things, it is a success. It is a success. Because just the fact that we're arguing it, the fact that we have to argue it, if it was a blatant failure, there would be no argument here. But the fact that there's a controversy is because it has, in fact, disrupted the market. Go, Paul.
Obviously, you're a liar and you hate everyone and you especially hate children. Ryzen is a failure because obviously the biggest part of desktop computing right now is PC gaming, and Ryzen sucks at PC gaming. Everyone who you ask will be like, Ryzen sucks for gaming, and if you try to game on Ryzen, it's going to suck. Your graphics card is probably going to explode. In fact, your entire computer will probably catch fire, burn your house down, which will also destroy your family, your livelihood, and anything that you hold dear.
Seems a little
excessive. Everyone should avoid that.
Should not be able to argue in the hyperbole.
Heinous consequences that can come from simply even considering to purchase a Ryzen processor.
That sounds very unfair.
All right, so let's see what you guys think. I know we haven't given you much time to vote. Success, though. Look at that. 77% say Ryzen is a success.
More people are concerned about the children than they are about Ryzen
People
being a
are
failure.
very concerned about the children. I think that's something that should be definitely taken into consideration here. But I only had 8% of the vote there, so that was a little slanted.
What's more concerning is that 77% of the people don't give a shit about children.
Obviously, 77% of people
like, fuck the children.
Want children to die.
I want a Ryzen chip.
All right. Now, next up, we have a bit more of a controversial subject here. I'm gonna
controversial.
I
don't say it that way. I say controversial. Controversial. But
maybe we should argue about that.
Controversial makes sense too.
All right. So Kyle, I don't know if you're aware of this, but we obviously. All right. So obviously, if you had to be like Kyle, who do we hate the most?
Jay.
Who do we have the longest term rivalry with?
Jay.
And who do we want to ultimately destroy?
Jay.
Okay, Jay.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Fuck him and everything he stands for.
I have good news.
Fuck Jay and the horse he rode in on.
I have good news, Kyle.
What?
We win.
We win?
We win.
We win. We beat
That's
Jay?
Exactly. We beat Jay.
Screw that guy.
So the long-term, the heated rivalry, obviously we go back and forth all the time about how Awesome Hardware is better than Tech Talk and that everyone should stop watching Tech Talk and everything like that. And we've won.
Yep.
We have won.
Yep.
Tech Talk is ending.
Yep. What?
Jay and Jerry have folded under the pressure.
No.
The constant pressure from us.
Yes.
The Tech Talk sucks. Yes. And they should end it because Awesome Hardware is way better. And the final episode of Tech Talk will be on Thursday.
Really?
In fact,
I missed that tweet.
In fact, Jerry's going to be here in town locally, and they're promising to drink some alcohol. Obviously, yet another admission that Awesome Hardware is better because
we could hold our shit.
Going along with the
It just means that we were able to hold our liquor.
pretty much. That's pretty much it.
They tapped out at a certain point.
So the question
we never will.
The question for us moving forward is, now that we've defeated Jay and Jerry and the long-term
next stop WAN show.
What's next? What should we do next?
Okay.
And that is an option.
Go after LTT.
Go after LTT.
Obviously.
We've done enough. Time to rest.
Live roadshow. I like that too.
We could take the name Tech Talk. We could call Awesome Hardware Tech Talk now. Right? Do a name update.
Yes.
A live road show, or just do a shot.
Bitware. Or do a shot. Yeah.
All right. So since you already tipped your hand, I'm going to steal your argument. Go after Linus Tech Tips.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Block him.
Obviously, the big dog, the on the block and whatever. Linus Tech Tips, doing the, what do they call their show again? That's
some WAN shit.
It's the WAN show.
Who cares?
And they talk about technology, but do they really care? Do they really care about the technology? No.
No.
They're just in it for the money.
Yeah.
And their sponsorships with their Tunnel Bear and their Intel stuff and whatever that is. So that's really what we should do now.
I wouldn't be caught dead
so
on it.
Awesome Hardware would now be declaring basically all-out war on Linus Tech Tips and the WAN show, declaring that our show is better and that they're a bunch of pussies.
Yeah,
and that's what we should. You're supposed to disagree.
You're right. You're wrong.
Else.
And okay, but you know what? it's funny that you say that I'm supposed to disagree. Because at the end of the day, you're going to end up agreeing with me. You're going to see my side of things, Paul.
Well, possibly.
You're about to see my side of things, all right? Because my argument in all this, from the list that you provided here, is that we have done enough. It's time to rest and eat some gosh darn sushi. Yeah. Yeah. Everything you just said, done. Just
damn it.
Gone. Yeah.
You're right.
I went there.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Playing on the heartstrings.
You don't even have to explain yourself.
Of our stomachs. I don't. Case closed.
You've changed my mind.
Nope.
Also, according to Gontor in chat, Canadian pussies are called beavers.
Hey.
That makes sense.
Hey.
That makes sense. All right. Well, that's a very strong argument you make there, Kyle. Let's
I know.
see what people think about that one.
Mm-hmm.
Had plenty of time to argue. Go after Linus Tech Tips is very. Do a shot was close, a very close second.
Wow.
And apparently, there's also a reasonable constituency that thinks we should take the name Tech Talk and just call our show Tech Talk now.
I'm sure Jay would appreciate
Which
that.
is, yeah, I mean, well, what? They're done with it.
Yeah, they're done with it.
Obviously, it's run its course.
Look at all their SEO.
All right, so going after Linus Tech Tips. That'll be our goal.
Maybe we'll start next week.
We should infiltrate their show. That's what we should do. We should go undercover.
A week from now?
Somehow mysteriously appear on their show under the guise of something completely different.
I'm down with that.
All right. Probably not this week, though. Maybe the week after.
Yeah, week after sounds good.
Okay.
Next
All right.
Friday.
Let's do that.
All right, cool.
Sweet. Let's do some Johnson shoutouts, guys. To any of you all who have happened to have made a purchase during the show.
Michael for picking up an Evolution and a CPU Cooler shirt. Thank you, brother. Also, Jason for picking up a BIOS Flasher shirt. Shout out to you, sir.
I have two.
Okay, I have quite a few.
You have two. Everyone, all right, you guys are. That's cool. That's cool. I don't care.
That's cool.
I don't care.
I have new shirt designs. It's normal.
Jeffrey got a pub glass.
Jeffrey!
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I love you, Jeffrey. You were the best. Also, Rolando from Illinois with the Zero Insertion Force shirt. Thank you so much, Rolando.
Very nice. Brent with the Evolution and the BIOS Flasher shirt. Johnson to you, sir.
Hey.
We've also got one from Anand.
Hey.
No relation to Anand Tech.
Probably not.
Although it is Anand T. I will say from Palm Bay, Florida for picking up a BIOS Flasher shirt. Thank you, sir.
Sweet Jesus.
We've also got, one from Alex, BIOS Flasher shirt. Johnson to you, Alex. Thank you so much, sir. Jeffrey,
Thanks,
double
Alex.
Johnson.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey
double
L,
Johnson
perhaps,
for Jeffrey.
With picking up some glasses.
Lovely.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. We also got a Johnson for another Jeffrey.
That's another Jeffrey.
A Jeffrey G.
With the G.
Picking up CPU Cooler shirt. We got a Johnson for Nicola. Most awesome name
or
ever.
Evan. Or Evan. Could be Evan. This was two names.
Yeah, who you're shipping to. For the Evolution shirt, we got a Johnson shout out for Irvins for picking up an Evolution shirt.
Not just one Irvin. More than multiple Irvins.
And we have Rolando Double Johnson.
Double Johnson Rolando.
BIOS Flasher shirts. We got just 3 more here.
Jesus.
Kevin, thank you very much, sir,
Kevin.
for picking up a Crystal RGB. You're a diehard fan. Thank you, sir. One for Brian S. for picking up a Stay Positive shirt. Yes.
Glorious.
And one last one, Johnson, for Jason for picking up Stay
and that's
Positive
perfect because I
CPU Cooler.
saved Jason for last.
Hey!
Because it's a double Johnson for
Double
Jason.
Johnson.
Also got the white logo men's Turbulent shirt. So thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all so much. You're wonderful people. We love you all.
You're alright.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Awesome Hardware. We are back. It's been great. I mean, we had a few weeks off, so sorry about that, but we're back, and it's been great. We'll be back again next week.
Had 1 week off, which wasn't too bad.
Yeah, right? But if you look at the last 3 weeks, we've done 1 out of 3.
True. Yeah.
So, and that one was a really kind of quirky, weird live show from a hotel room.
True.
Which was...
But we did have Steve from Gamers Next.
We did have Steve there,
which
so
made
that
it pretty
was
epic.
That was pretty sexy. Awesome.
But yeah.
All right, so guys, thank you so much for watching today's show. Of course, if you missed Kyle's half, check it out. Links down in the description. You're wonderful people. We love you all.
Indeed.
And we'll see you all next week.
Yes.
Next week's live show.
And we'll, for those of you who are trying to donate, I guess according to Sal, one of our mods, the donation thing has been sort of shifted with the YouTube space. So we'll try to figure out what's going on with that.
And figure that out.
And we'll hopefully have it fixed by next week. So thank you guys.
One final thing, if you guys are watching on Twitch, if you're watching live, and you want to do a Twitch raid,
I'll raid it.
We're doing a Twitch raid from Cell. Twitch.tv/Montana Waterfalls. Montana Waterfalls. MONTANAWATERFALLS. Everyone go Twitch raid Montana Waterfalls.
No.
Tell them we sent you.
Darkest dungeon.
And have a wonderful evening, people.
Yep.
Thanks for watching. We're gonna host them too. So
yeah, they only have 3 viewers right now. Raid the shit
oh,
out of
that's
them.
gonna be awesome.
Blow their minds.
It's gonna be awesome. All right. Have a good one, guys.
All right, later, guys.